Sit down, make yourself comfortable, and let me tell you a story. This is not just any story. It is the story of how my life changed forever on a very ordinary Saturday in 2026. Outside my window, the sky was a deep, dark gray. The city of London felt small and quiet under a heavy curtain of rain. You know those days, right? When the raindrops are so heavy they sound like someone is knocking on your window asking to come in? Tap, tap, tap. I stood by the glass for a long time. I watched the water run down the window, making little rivers. I looked at my reflection. I saw a young woman with tired eyes. I saw Emma, the marketing manager of Agroforce, but I didn't see the Emma I wanted to be. I walked away from the window and back to my sofa. My apartment felt like a small island in the middle of a rainy ocean. It smelled like vanilla candles and the green tea I had just made. I wrapped myself in a big blue handmade blanket, the one my grandmother gave me years ago. It was so soft, like a warm hug from the past. Luna, my white cat, was already there. She was curled into a perfect ball of fur at the end of the sofa. She opened one green eye, looked at me, and went back to sleep. She is very good at relaxing. I wish I was like her. I was holding my tea, but I wasn't drinking it. My mind was far away. I thought about my office. I thought about the spreadsheets, the marketing reports, the campaigns for corn hybrids, and the endless Zoom meetings. I thought, Emma, is this it? Is this your whole life? You are 30 years old, you live in a beautiful apartment, you have a good job, but your heart feels quiet. It feels empty. I remembered what my grandfather used to tell me when I was a little girl. He was an explorer. He had silver hair and eyes that always looked at the horizon. He told me, Emma, the world is a book, and those who do not travel read only one page. Don't be a person who only reads one page. That day, looking at the rain, I realized I had been reading the same page for 5 years. I felt a sudden, strange energy in my chest. I stood up so quickly that Luna jumped. I walked to the corner of the room where an old wooden chest sat. This chest was my grandfather's. It was heavy and smelled like old paper, cedar wood, and history. I opened it slowly. Inside, there were many treasures. An old black and white camera, some silver coins from forgotten countries, and a thick leather book. I pulled out the book. It was a hand-drawn atlas, a book of maps. I started to turn the yellow pages. France, Italy, Egypt, and then I stopped. My breath caught in my throat. I found a page with a small red circle around a mountain range in the Caucasus. Next to the circle, in my grandfather's beautiful handwriting, were the words, Georgia, where the heart finally breathes. Under the map, there was a dried flower pressed into the paper. I touched it, and it felt like a message from him. Why did he circle this? Why did he never tell me about it? I felt like I had found a secret key to a door I didn't know existed. At that exact moment, my phone on the coffee table started to glow. It vibrated, buzz, buzz, buzz. I thought, oh no, not now. Please, no more work emails on a Saturday. I almost didn't look at it, but something made me pick it up. The email was from my director at Agroforce, but the subject line was strange. It didn't say report or meeting. It said, Project Phoenix, an extraordinary opportunity. I sat down on the floor, right there next to the old chest and the map of Georgia. I opened the email with shaking fingers. My director wrote, Emma, I am writing to you because I know you are more than just a manager. We are starting a secret mission. We are going to the high mountains to help small, isolated farming communities. We need to build a digital network and help them save their ancient traditions. It is a 6-month mission. It will be cold, It will be difficult, and you will be far from home, but it will be the adventure of a lifetime. The location is the Sarawani region and the mountains of Savani. I thought of you immediately. Are you brave enough to say yes? I looked at the phone screen. Then I looked at my grandfather's map of Georgia. The circle on his map was exactly where the project was going. My heart was beating so loud I could hear it in my ears. This wasn't a coincidence. This was destiny. I looked at my comfortable sofa, my warm tea, and my safe life. Then I looked at the old atlas. I thought about the mountains I had never seen and the fresh bread I had never tasted. Emma, I whispered to myself, if you say no, you stay safe, but you stay the same. If you say yes, you finally start living. I didn't wait for Monday morning. I didn't think about my gym routine or my plans for the weekend. I grabbed my laptop, opened a reply, and typed only one word in big capital letters. Yes. I pressed send and closed the laptop. The room felt different. The air felt electric, like the air before a big storm. I wasn't just Emma, the marketing manager, anymore. I was a woman with a mission. I was an explorer. But as the excitement started to fade, the fear arrived. How do I tell my partner? How do I pack my life into one suitcase? And what is the real secret behind Project Phoenix? My grandfather's map was old, but the red circle felt new. In the next part, I will tell you about my nervous Monday morning at the office and the mysterious file my boss gave me, a file that had my grandfather's name on it. Stay with me, because this story is just getting started. The rain did not stop all weekend, but on Monday morning, the sun finally broke through the clouds. The streets of London were shining and the air smelled fresh. Usually on Monday mornings, I feel a little bit lazy. I want to stay in bed with Luna and drink my coffee slowly. But today was different. Today, I was at my desk at AgriForce at 8 a.m. I was the first person in the office. I sat in my chair and looked at my computer, but I couldn't focus on my usual marketing reports. My mind was full of questions. Why did my grandfather have a map of Georgia? Why did he circle that specific mountain? And what did Project Phoenix really mean? At 9 a.m., my boss, Mr. Henderson, walked into the office. He is a tall man with a very serious face, but a kind heart. He looked at me and signaled with his hand, "Emma, come to my office, please. We need to talk about your decision." I walked into his office. It was a beautiful room filled with maps, books about agriculture, and small models of tractors. He sat down and opened a thick gray file. He looked at me for a long time without speaking. Then he said something that changed everything. "Emma," he started, "you said yes to this project very quickly. Most people would be afraid to go to the mountains for 6 months. But I think I know why you are not afraid. It's in your blood." He pushed the gray file toward me. On the cover, there was a small logo of a bird, a phoenix, and under the logo there were 3 names. 2 of the names were scientists I didn't know, but the third name made me stop breathing for a second. It said Consultant Thomas Walker. "Thomas Walker?" I whispered. That was my grandfather." Mr. Henderson nodded. "Yes, Emma, your grandfather was one of the first people to help the farmers in the Sarawani region. He went there 30 years ago. He helped them build the first irrigation systems for their corn and wheat. He loved that place. Before he died, he told me, 'One day we must go back and finish the work. We must help them enter the digital age.' I couldn't believe it. I touched the paper. It felt like my grandfather was in the room with me. I opened the file. Inside, there were old photos of a village. I saw stone houses, green valleys, and tall white mountains. In one photo, I saw a younger version of my grandfather. He was standing next to a tall Georgian man with a big mustache. They were both smiling. Behind them was a sign that said Svaneti. "So, what is my job?" I asked, my voice shaking with excitement. "You are going there as our marketing and technology lead. The village is beautiful, but it is isolated. The young people are leaving because they don't have jobs or internet. We are going to build a smart village. We will create a digital platform for their products, build a website for their community, and show the world their culture. You will be the bridge between their traditions and the future." I looked at the photos again. I felt a huge responsibility. This wasn't just a marketing project for AgriForce. This was a family mission. This was my chance to walk where my grandfather walked and finish his dream. "When do I leave?" I asked. "In 2 weeks," he replied. "You need to pack your things, get your visa for Georgia, and prepare yourself. It will not be easy, Emma. There is no Starbucks in those mountains. The winters are long and the roads are dangerous. Are you still sure?" I looked at the photo of my grandfather and the Georgian man. I looked at the red circle in my mind from the old atlas. I felt a strength I never felt before. "I am more than sure," I said. "I am ready." As I walked out of his office, the whole building looked different. My colleagues were busy with their phones and computers, talking about normal things, but I felt like I was already halfway across the world. I went back to my desk and started a new list. This wasn't a list of dreams anymore. It was a list of actions. Find a house for Luna while I'm away, buy heavy winter boots and a warm jacket, start learning basic Georgian words immediately, call my fiancé and tell him the news. That night, I went home and opened the old chest again. I looked at the black and white camera. I decided I would take it with me. I would take photos of the same places my grandfather saw. But as I was looking through the old papers in the chest, I found something I didn't see before. It was an old envelope with a Georgian stamp. Inside was a small key. There was no note, just a silver key with a number, 402. What did this key open? Was it a door in London, or was it a door thousands of miles away in the mountains of Georgia? I didn't know the answer yet, but I knew that the mystery was becoming deeper every hour. In the next part, I will tell you about the difficult goodbye with my friends and the moment I finally landed at the Tbilisi airport. The adventure was no longer a dream. It was becoming my reality. The last 2 weeks in London were like a dream. Everything moved so fast. I had to pack my whole life into 2 large suitcases. It is very difficult to decide what is important when you are going away for 6 months. I looked at my books, my dresses, and my gadgets. In the end, I packed only the essentials: warm clothes, my Sony camera, Site 2026-0115, my grandfather's old atlas, and, of course, that mysterious silver key with the number 402. Saying goodbye was the hardest part. My fiancé was very supportive, but I could see sadness in his eyes. Site 2025, November 26th. We sat in our favorite cafe one last time. He held my hand and said, "Emma, this is your adventure. Go and find the answers you are looking for. I will be here when you come back." We promised to talk every day on video calls. And then there was Luna. I left her with my best friend. When I put her in her carrier, she looked at me with those big green eyes, as if she knew I was going far away. I felt a small tear in my eye, but I knew she would be safe and happy. The flight was very long. I flew from London to Istanbul, and then from Istanbul to Tbilisi. I couldn't sleep on the plane. I spent the whole time looking out the window at the clouds. I kept touching the silver key in my pocket. I wondered, what does it open? Is it a house? A box? A secret? when the pilot announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, we are descending into Tbilisi International Airport." My heart jumped. I looked down and saw the lights of the city. It looked like a sea of gold in the dark night. When I stepped out of the plane, the first thing I noticed was the air. It was different from London. It was crisp, fresh, and smelled like dry grass and ancient stone. I walked through the airport, collected my heavy bags, and walked toward the exit. I was nervous. Would anyone be there to meet me? Outside, I saw a sea of people, and then I saw a large sign that said, "Agroforce, welcome Emma." Standing under the sign was a young woman with dark hair and a bright, energetic smile. Next to her was a very tall man with a thick gray beard and kind eyes. He looked exactly like the man in my grandfather's old photo. "Gamarjoba, Emma," the woman said, hugging me. "I am Nina, your local coordinator, and this is Gogi. He remembers your grandfather." Gogi took my heavy bags as if they were as light as feathers. He looked at me and spoke in a deep, warm voice. Nina translated for me. "He says you have your grandfather's eyes. He says the mountains have been waiting for the return of a walker." I felt a shiver down my spine. It was not from the cold, it was from the emotion. We walked to a large 4x4 car, a white Toyota that looked like it could climb any mountain. As we drove away from the airport, Nina started to tell me about the plan. "Tonight, we stay in Tbilisi," she explained. "You need to rest. Tomorrow morning, very early, we drive north. We are going to the high mountains, to Savanati. That is where Project Phoenix begins. That is where the farmers are waiting for us." As we drove through the streets of Tbilisi, I was amazed. I saw modern glass buildings next to very old, beautiful churches. I saw the Narikala fortress glowing on the hill. The city felt alive, even at 2 a.m. We arrived at a small boutique hotel in the Old Town. Nina gave me my room key and said, "Sleep well, Emma. Tomorrow, your life truly changes." I went up to my room. It was a beautiful room with wooden floors and a small balcony. I opened the window and looked out at the city. I felt so far from my office in London, so far from my stable routine. I took out the silver key, 402, and put it on the nightstand. I realized something important that night. I wasn't just a marketing manager on a business trip. I was a granddaughter following a ghost. I was a teacher ready to learn. And I was a woman who finally found her courage. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in weeks, I fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. In my dreams, I saw white mountains and heard the sound of a distant bell. The sun rose over Tbilisi like a ball of fire, but we didn't stay to watch it for long. By 6 a.m., we were already in Borghi's white Toyota, leaving the golden city behind. Our destination was the north, the high mountains of Svaneti. As we drove, the landscape began to change. The flat roads became winding and steep. The green hills turned into massive white giants. These were the Caucasus Mountains. I have seen photos of the Swiss Alps and the Rockies in America, but this was different. These mountains felt older, more powerful, and very mysterious. I looked out the window and felt so small, like a tiny ant crawling on the back of a giant. "Are you okay, Emma?" Nina asked from the front seat. She saw me looking at the deep canyons and the frozen rivers below us. "I am fine," I said, but my voice was quiet. "I am just thinking about my grandfather. He did this journey 30 years ago, probably in a much older car on much worse roads. He was so brave." Gorgi looked at me through the mirror and nodded. He didn't speak English, but he understood the word grandfather. He pointed to a high tower on a hill and said something in Georgian. Nina translated. "He says that is a swan tower. It has stood there for hundreds of years to protect the people. He says your grandfather loved those towers. He called them the fingers of the earth pointing to the sky. The higher we went, the colder it became. The air was so thin and fresh that every breath felt like drinking cold water. Finally, after many hours of driving, we arrived in a small village hidden in a white valley. This was the place. This was where Project Phoenix would happen. The village was like something from a fairy tale. Stone houses with smoke coming from their chimneys, cows walking slowly through the snow, and children playing with old wooden sleds. People came out of their houses to see us. They didn't look like people from London. They had strong hands, weathered faces, and the kindest eyes I have ever seen. We went to a large community house where the farmers were waiting. Nina and I started our work. I opened my laptop, it looked so strange and modern in this ancient room, and showed them my ideas for the smart village. I talked about digital markets, about sharing their stories with the world, and about connecting their honey and wine to customers in Europe. But while I was talking, my eyes kept moving to the back of the room. There was an old wooden cabinet with many small drawers, and on one of the drawers there was a small brass plate with a number. My heart stopped. The number was 402. I finished the meeting as fast as I could. My heart was pounding like a drum. When the room was empty, I walked to the cabinet. My hand was shaking as I took the silver key out of my pocket. I looked at Nina. She was watching me with curiosity. "Emma, what is that?" she asked. I think my grandfather left me a message," I whispered. I put the key into the lock of drawer 402. It fit perfectly. I turned it slowly. Click. The drawer opened. Inside, there was no gold or diamonds. There was a small wooden box. Inside the box was a collection of old seeds, corn, wheat, and some flowers, each in a tiny glass bottle. And there was a letter written in English and Georgian. I opened the letter. It said, "To whoever finds this key. These are the original seeds. They are the soul of this mountain. Technology will change the world, Emma, but the earth is what feeds us. Don't just build a website. Protect the seeds. Protect the soul." At the bottom of the letter was a date of September 1996 and a signature, Thomas Walker. I sat down on the floor and cried. I wasn't sad, I was overwhelmed. My grandfather didn't just want me to be a marketing manager, he wanted me to be a protector. He knew that one day I would come here. He knew that in 2026, the world would be too fast and too digital, and we would need to remember the earth. Gorgi walked into the room. He saw me with the seeds and the letter. He didn't say anything. He just put his hand on my shoulder. It was a heavy, warm hand that felt like home. That night, I didn't think about London. I didn't think about my office or my gym routine. I sat by the fireplace in the village house looking at the tiny seeds. I realized that my job was much bigger than I thought. I had to build a bridge, yes, but the bridge had to be built on the truth of the earth. But then Nina walked in with a worried face. "Emma," she said, "you need to see this. Something is happening with the digital network we just started. Someone is trying to stop the project from the outside." The mystery was not over. In fact, the real danger was just beginning. Who didn't want the smart village to succeed? And why were my grandfather's seeds so important to them? The night in the village was cold, but the atmosphere inside the community house was even colder. Nina was staring at her tablet screen, her face pale. "Emma," she whispered, "someone is attacking our servers. They are trying to delete the database of the smart village and all the information about your grandfather's seeds. It's a cyber attack." I felt a cold shiver. Who would do this? Why would anyone want to destroy a project that helps poor farmers? Then I remembered something my boss, Mr. Henderson, said back in London. He mentioned that there were big companies that wanted to control the seeds of the world, companies that didn't want farmers to be independent. Emma, I said, my voice becoming firm, we cannot let them win. This is not just about technology, it's about the truth. I sat down and opened my laptop. My heart was pounding. Usually I am a marketing manager, but that night I had to be a fighter. I used everything I knew about digital systems. We worked for 6 hours without stopping. Outside, the wind was screaming through the Swan Towers, and inside, the only sound was the clicking of my keyboard. Click, click, click. Gogi stayed with us. He didn't understand the code on the screen, but he kept the fire burning in the fireplace. He brought us hot mountain tea with honey. His presence felt like a shield. Every time I felt tired, I looked at the wooden box of seeds and the photo of my grandfather. I felt his strength in my blood. Finally, at 4 a.m., the attacks stopped. We did it. We blocked them. Not only that, but we also found out where the attack came from. It was a rival company that wanted to steal the Phoenix project. We saved it, Nina, I said, exhausted but smiling. The seeds are safe. The farmer's future is safe. The next morning, the village was covered in a fresh, white blanket of snow. It was so beautiful, it didn't look real. It looked like a painting. I walked outside and saw the sun hitting the peaks of the mountains. They looked like diamonds. Suddenly, I saw Gogi's white Toyota driving toward the house. But Gogi wasn't alone. A man stepped out of the car. He was wearing a thick jacket and a scarf, and he looked very cold. My heart stopped. It was my fiancé. He had traveled all the way from London to the mountains of Georgia to be with me. I couldn't stay away, he said, hugging me. I saw your videos on YouTube. I saw how much you love this place. I wanted to see the magic with my own eyes. That day, we had a big celebration in the village. The farmers made a supra, a traditional Georgian feast. The table was covered with hachapuri, lobiani, and local wine. There was singing and dancing. Gogi stood up and made a toast. He spoke in Georgian, and Nina translated. To Emma, the granddaughter of the mountains. She didn't just bring us computers, she brought us her heart. She reminded us that our roots are our power. I looked around the table. I saw my partner, my new friends, and the ancient towers of Svaneti. I felt a deep sense of peace. I realized that my life in London was good, but this life was meaningful. I decided that I would not go back to my old office job at Agroforce as the same person. I told Mr. Henderson that I wanted to stay in Georgia for a full year. I wanted to help build the first school of digital agriculture in Svaneti. I wanted to plant my grandfather's seeds and watch them grow. As I sit here now, recording this final part for you, I am looking out at the mountains. The air is cool and my heart is full. Why did I tell you this story? Because I want you to understand 3 things. Your history is a gift. Sometimes the answers to your future are hidden in your past, in an old chest or an old map. Don't be afraid to look for them. Technology is only a tool. It is beautiful to have the internet and smart devices, but they must serve the people and the earth. Never forget the seeds. Change is beautiful. It is scary to leave your sofa, your routine, and your comfort zone. But on the other side of fear, there is an adventure waiting for you. My English journey was just the beginning. It was the key that allowed me to speak to Nina, to Gogi, and to you. English is not just words. It is a bridge. Thank you for traveling with me from the rainy streets of London to the high peaks of the Caucasus. My name is Emma, and this is not the end of my story. It is just the beginning of a new chapter. It began on a Tuesday evening, just as the sun was disappearing behind the white, jagged teeth of the Caucasus Mountains. The village was peaceful. I could hear the distant sound of cowbells and the crackling of the fire in the large stone fireplace of the community house. I was sitting at a long wooden table, drinking hot tea with Nina and Gogi. We were celebrating our first week of work. We had just connected the first local school to our new digital network. Everything felt perfect. But then, the atmosphere changed. The air felt heavy, like the silence before a massive lightning storm. Nina, who was looking at her tablet, suddenly froze. Her face went pale, almost as white as the snow outside. "Emma," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Something is wrong. Very wrong. I am seeing thousands of strange connections to our server. Someone is not just visiting our website, they are trying to break inside. It is a massive professional cyber attack." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine, from my neck to my toes. My heart started to pound against my chest like a trapped bird. Who would do this? Why would anyone want to destroy a project in a small, peaceful village? "They are targeting the Project Phoenix database," Nina said, her fingers flying across the screen. "They want the information about your grandfather's seeds, Emma. They want to delete the research and steal the digital map of the mountain's original plants." I realized then that my boss, Mr. Henderson at Agroforce, was right. There are people and companies in this world who do not want farmers to be independent. They want to control the food, the seeds, and the history of the earth. I looked at the old wooden box on the table, the box with drawer number 402. Inside were the seeds my grandfather had protected 30 years ago. I felt a sudden, hot wave of anger and courage. "Nina," I said, my voice becoming firm and strong, "turn on the backup generator. We are not losing this. Not tonight, not ever." For the next 8 hours, the world outside disappeared. The wind began to scream through the ancient Svan towers, shaking the windows of our house. Inside, the only sounds were the clicking of my keyboard and the heavy breathing of Nina. Click, 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 tap. I was no longer just Emma, the marketing manager from London. I was a protector. I used every skill I had ever learned. I used my knowledge of digital systems, my logic from playing chess, and my intuition. Gogi didn't understand the code on the screen. He didn't know what a firewall or a database was, but he stayed with us every single minute. He kept the fire burning bright. He brought us thick blankets and cups of strong, dark mountain tea. He stood behind us like a stone wall. His presence reminded us that we were fighting for something real, for his family, for his land, and for my grandfather's memory. It was a digital war. We blocked one attack and they started another. They tried to bypass our security, but I was faster. I felt like I could see the code in the air. At 3:45 a.m., I found a secret back door they were using. I reached for my mouse, took a deep breath, and closed it forever. I encrypted the data with a password only Gogi and I would know. Silence. The red lights on the screen turned green. "It's over," Nina whispered, tears running down her cheeks. "We blocked them. And Emma, I tracked the signal. It was a rival agricultural company from Europe. They wanted to steal the project and sell the seeds back to the farmers for a high price." I leaned back in my chair. My eyes were burning from the screen and my fingers were sore. I was exhausted, but I felt an incredible sense of victory. We had saved the soul of the village. As the first light of Wednesday morning began to turn the mountain peaks into pink gold, I walked outside. The air was so cold it made my lungs sting, but it felt wonderful. The village was waking up. I saw smoke rising from the chimneys and heard the first sounds of the morning. Suddenly, I saw a white car driving fast through the snow. It was Gogi's Toyota. It stopped in front of me, and a man jumped out. He was wearing a heavy coat and a long scarf. He looked tired and very cold. My heart stopped for the second time that night. "Makara!" I shouted. No, wait. I shouted his name, my fiancé. He had traveled from London through 2 planes and a long mountain road just to find me. "I saw your last video on YouTube," he said, his breath making white clouds in the air. "I saw the look in your eyes. I knew you weren't coming back to London anytime soon, so I decided to bring London to you." We stood there in the snow, surrounded by the giants of the Caucasus, and I knew my life had found its new rhythm. The weeks that followed were the most meaningful of my life. We didn't just build a website, we built a school. We taught the young people of the village how to use the Smart Village platform. We showed them that they didn't have to leave their homes to be successful. We planted my grandfather's seeds in a new, protected garden near the oldest tower. I decided to stay. I called Mr. Henderson at Agroforce and told him, "I am not coming back to the office. I'm staying here as the director of the Phoenix Foundation." He wasn't surprised. He just laughed and said, "I knew you would, Emma. You finally found your mountain." So, my friends, as I sit here on my balcony in Svaneti recording this final message for you, I want you to remember the lessons of this story. Listen to the whispers of the past. Your family history is not just names on a paper, it is a map for your future. Be the bridge. Use your skills, whether it's English, marketing, or technology, to help others. The Earth is our first home. No matter how digital our world becomes, we must always protect the seeds, the water, and the trees. Be brave enough to change. My life in London was comfortable, but my life in Georgia is alive. Thank you for listening to my 5-part story. Thank you for practicing your English with me. This language gave me the power to speak to the world, to Nina, to Gogi, and to you. English is not a chore. It is a key. Use it to open your own drawer 402. The sun is high in the sky now. Gogi is calling me for lunch. My partner is learning how to chop wood. And Luna? Don't worry, she's coming here next week on a special flight. This is Emma signing off from the heart of the mountains. Stay curious, stay consistent, and never stop exploring. Gushvidobit, my friends. Goodbye and good luck with your own adventure.